We've been discussing on recent shows the appetite or the potential of the rematch between Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua. It looks now, albeit pretty much confirmed by Frank Warren, that fight's not likely to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. I think that Anthony, in order to retain the value in the same way that he did with Ruiz, needs to go straight back in against Daniel Dubois. What do you think?
I'm with you on it. I think that he should have gone into the immediate rematch. I don't think that there is a rebuilding programme that needs to be done with Anthony Joshua now at this stage of his career. What I'm saying is that I'm talking about the opportunity there, and Eddie saying that there wasn't a rematch clause in that fight, and that fight could possibly happen next. I think Daniel Dubois was open about that fight happening next. He wanted to go again. February the 22nd did give Anthony Joshua enough time, in my eyes, to come down, recover, and rebuild again, but they've chose not to go down that route. So I think they've chose now that route to sit out and see what happens with Fury Usyk. If Fury loses to Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, box. If Fury beats Usyk, do we get the trilogy? Does he go for Anthony Joshua? That's the
What do you think, Denzel? I mean, you're Anthony. If you can superimpose yourself into Anthony Joshua's world, what would you do if you were in his shoes?
If I was Anthony Joshua, I'd want to go back into the immediate rematch. But of course, he has a team, and they're probably advising him not to, because I think it's more damaging to his career if he loses the same way again to Dubois than if he just takes another route, builds up a few fights, and then goes into another big fight. So I think they're trying to save his career more than anything.
Is that something that you would look at from if the team are guiding you that way, and the team are suggesting, because we're potentially alluding to the fact that Joshua as a fighter will jump back in against Dubois, and his commercial team are going, maybe that's not the right way to go. Maybe this could finish you if it goes badly. Is that not confidence sapping? Because if your team don't believe in you, how do you believe in yourself?
I can understand that. It does make sense. I mean, I've heard people say Anthony Joshua saying he'd rather go in again and lose to Dubois than skip him and go around the houses and try and find another way to win a world title. And I believe that, but ultimately, you have a team, you got to trust them, and they're probably, giving them that belief that, listen, take some time off. You have to be honest. They tell them that was devastating. We've got to get you back. Whether you do have the rematch later down the line, we just need to reserve you for now.
They're looking at Anthony Joshua and looking at the commercial value of Anthony Joshua and saying, looking at it and going, look, he's at this stage of his career. He's a two-time world heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, been there, done it. You've got to go back into the immediate rematch. There's no rebuilding process. They're looking at it and looking at the longevity of it and saying, well, let's take a different route and see what happens with the Tyson Fury thing.
If they are making the case, he's got to have a fight before he jumps back in.
He wants to go back in, by the way.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But he's always told us he's captain of his own ship.
Yeah.
So make your mind up. You're either captain of your own ship or you're not. Agree. But if there was an interim fight or a rebuild fight, some sort of momentum builder for him, who could that possibly be against?
Well, this is the problem, because it's got to be someone with some sort of substance, and then that makes them a dangerous commodity anyway. Do you know what I mean? So that's my point entirely. That you look at it and you go, where does he go? Does he go in with you look at like a Filip Hrgovic type fighter, where you go, Hrgovic is coming off that loss as well. Could we see something like? Because it has to be a name of sorts. You can't just go in with at this stage. So that was why my thinking behind it was go straight back in, because you're going into a dangerous fight, whatever happens.
I tell you who was talking about it the other day was Dillian Whyte. Let's hear what he has to say about it.
It's hard to say, man. He's a weird one. I've always said it, he's a weird one. You can never understand what he's going to do. And if you look at the fight, the boy is in the fight, he's bouncing around, he's paced up, and AJ's just standing there, spaced out like this, just staring for like 5 minutes. He just seems like he wasn't there. And then the fight starts, he's moving on with his hands down, he's getting clocked with right hands, he's not defending them. I would definitely fight AJ next.
Okay.
I really hate Denzel Wilder, but I got stopped by AJ, I've been stopped by Wilder, so I definitely want to get that one back.
Well, he would say that, but what do you think about AJ going in against Dillian Whyte?
I think, it's a good fight. It's a challenging fight. Well, we don't know where Dillian Whyte is since he's been inactive for about, I don't know, last 3 years or something or so. He had the chance to have the rematch, and obviously complications with a failed test and stuff stopped that. But I think that would be a good fight for AJ to get the ball rolling again. But he's given Dillian Whyte a chance to, get back into the scene when you could just leave him.
And they got history with each other, stylistically and whatnot.
But is there credibility in it? Is there credibility in AJ going against Dillian Whyte?
the words I picked up on there was, it's a dangerous fight. So for me, there is no credibility in that. I think that if you get the opportunity and it's on the table to fight Daniel Dubois again, that's where I'm going. Because fighting Dillian Whyte, who's a dangerous fighter, and like, you know, boxers always have trouble with certain styles. AJ clearly has one with Dillian Whyte. I go, risk and reward with that doesn't weigh out the one going in the return with Daniel Dubois and sort of, you know, risking to, you know, daring to be great and become a free time.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
What do you think the overall perspective of Anthony from the boxing fraternity will be in terms of not going against Dubois? Do you think people will figure that, not sure where you are now? Because I made the case, and I made it repeatedly, and I got it rebutted by you endlessly, about Anthony Joshua's rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And that when he got a live one, it might be a challenge for him. I didn't want that for him, but Daniel Dubois stuck it on him, and the challenge was that the first time he got one on the whiskers, Anthony was in trouble. Big shot, and Dubois has to be given all the credits. But where do you think the credibility now of Anthony Joshua is in terms of not going back in with Dubois and maybe finding another route? Are the British boxing fans going to still embrace AJ the way they did, walking 96,000 people waited for Anthony Joshua to walk in a ring, like anointing him back to the throne?
Well, that's the consequences that he's going to have to pay for not going back in there with the general public. That is the world that we live in. You know, they're going to make their decision, say, oh, that was the right decision for us, business decision, we think we go do that rebuild. But the reality is, at this stage of your career, you go in there, you roll the dice, man, and go back in. That's where I'm at with it. And I think I think if Anthony Joshua had that control in this team situation, he would go in there as well.
Well, he has to control.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So he's obviously being advised and guided to go elsewhere. So Barry Hearn saying, yeah, you know, I think we take Anthony somewhere else. Eddie Hearn as well, you know, saying maybe it's not the right time. He won't be ready by February the 22nd. That's a long time away.
It is a long time away, obviously, considering that the fight was in September. It's a long time away. But in terms of his credit, like you said, Simon, I think it goes down. I don't think people will give him the credit that he deserves, no matter what he does. Whoever he comes up against, if he fights Dillian Whyte or Hrgovic, as you were saying, he's not going to get the same credit for beating those guys because everyone wants to see him, you know, revenge that loss that, you know, he just had.
Where are you at with it? What do you think, you know, AJ should do next?
I think, and I've always felt, that if he wants to redeem the arguments and redeem himself in the eyes of those that will judge him, he's got to go back in against Daniel Dubois. He's got to go back in and give himself the best chance of winning this fight, because if it goes again against him, this is not Alexander Usyk. This is not an opportunity for him to rebuild where he lost to Usyk and has come back and rebuilt himself. He isn't going to get that opportunity again. If he goes in against Dubois and loses, then I think that's the end of the conversation as far as Anthony Joshua being considered a serious contender for a world heavyweight title. But on the commercial side of things, not because I need to be fed, not because I'm part of an entourage that needs to keep on being fed by Anthony Joshua, I would also look at the commercial opportunities. There's a big fight coming up in December between Fury and Usyk. Why would you pin your colours to the mast when there might be an opportunity for something else to come out of the ether?
You said the word there, might. If Tyson Fury loses, there's an opportunity for him to fight Fury. But I believe if Fury beats Alexander Usyk, they go in for their trilogy again. So he's playing a dangerous game, sitting on the sidelines, waiting to see what happens. But that's in my eyes.
But think about this, and where are you on this, Denzel? If Fury were to beat Usyk, and I don't think there's a condition in this fight that there's a rematch automatically there and afterwards. I think I'm right on that. What would you like to see? Would you like to see Fury versus Usyk 3?
Yeah.
Or would you like to see the fight that's never happened that people have been wanting for some time, which is Fury versus Joshua?
I mean, for me, being a Brit and a fan of, you know, both the guys, I'd like to see Fury versus AJ, because that's, like you said, that's a fight we haven't seen. We've seen Fury versus Usyk, going to be twice in December. To see a third fight, I mean, it would be nice, it would be interesting, but if there's a fight that we haven't seen and we might not get if that third fight happens, I'd rather see that fight, and then I don't mind seeing, you know, the trilogy after.
We had Joe Parker on talkSPORT over the weekend. He was talking about an opportunity to fight Daniel Dubois. Let's hear what Joe has to say about that.
I have been very vocal about wanting to fight Daniel Dubois. I think, like Adam said, he's done exceptionally well with Don Charles and his dad and his team. He's looked great with the Miller fight, Hrgovic fight. He's looked good against Joshua, getting that devastating knockout. But there's a difference with me and all those other fighters. I'm fresh, I'm hungry, and I'm ready to go. And I've been waiting since March for a big fight. Let's get it on now. There are a few things to be able to, a few hurdles they have to jump through to try and make this fight happen. But I feel like it can happen, and I want it to happen, but hopefully everyone can come together and make this fight happen.
given the form that Joe Parker's in right now, this is a good fight. There's a part of me that wants Anthony back in the ring with Daniel Dubois because we didn't get what we expected in the last fight. And you have to give all the credit to Daniel Dubois. But there's another part of me that goes, well, Joseph Parker gets, first of all, you weren't a champion, Anthony, so you shouldn't get a rematch clause anyway, and you haven't. You've just got a slot available in February for Riyadh season. Yeah. So really, it should be Joe Parker. This is a good fight, isn't it?
I agree. Joe Parker's earned his stripes. You look at, what he's done in the last 12 months or so, and you go, he deserves the shot. More than anybody out there, really. With the way that he's come through as an underdog in his last 3 fights, and been victorious in them all. So, yeah, of course, he deserves it next. He's the guy that should be in with it next. And by the way, I believe that is the guy that goes in with the next.
What do you think of that fight? Who do you think wins that fight?
It's a good fight. I mean, Dubois is very dangerous. Joseph Parker's very game, very solid. He's a tough man. You saw him get put down twice by Zhang and still get up to win. But Dubois, he's on the rise right now. His confidence is sky high. And like I said, he's dangerous. He carries real power, in especially that backhand. So it's a dangerous fight for Parker to go into, but it's a fight he deserves, and he's willing to do so, and I think he put up a good fight.
Absolutely right.
Who do you think starts favourite in that fight, by the way?
Daniel Dubois.
You think Daniel will start favourite in
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what we've been seeing recently with Joe Parker is a change in his approach because of his association with Andy Lee now, right? But also with respect to the rebuild of Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder is not the fighter that he was.
Sure.
Right? So no one knew that when he went into the ring, so you have to give all the credit in December to Joe Parker.
Yeah.
Zhili Zhang hits hard, but he doesn't operate at the same level of pace and movement that Daniel Dubois does. Yeah. So whilst Zhang hits hard, and he dropped Joe Parker twice in that fight, Daniel Dubois is much younger, much fresher. Yeah. So it's a different proposition. That's why I would say going into... And also, even when you listen to Daniel now, Daniel speaks differently. Yeah. 2 years ago, with all due respect to him, he was a mute. His father would come on the radio and his father would do all the bloody talking. Yeah. And Daniel would sort of sit there, not being able to say much. Now you listen to him.
Yeah.
Listen to him as his language that he's using, the confidence that he's exuding. So he's already assuming that I'm a world champion.
I see him in the gym and he's grown in stature as a person. You say, when we talk about fights and you've been a champion before, you win that title, elevates you to another level. That is a fact. It does that, historically with every fighter. And I think we've seen that with Daniel, where he come in there, and he walks into that Wembley against Anthony Joshua and you think he could be the kid that freezes. This occasion could be the one. Anthony Joshua's been there before. He comes in like a gladiator, walks in and you go, the kid has grown in stature. Yeah. And you're right, Simon, in what you say, the interviews that he's doing now, he couldn't put 2 words together before. He's now putting in interviews, we're seeing the personality come out of him. So he's not just grown as a fighter, but as a person as well.
Do you think this could be a Daniel Dubois era? Because 4 years ago, this kid was being put forward, I don't mean kid disrespectfully to Daniel, but because he's young still, as the heavyweight future with the Tyson Furies and the Anthony Joshua's. Watch out, this is the kid that's coming through. He loses to Joe Joyce. He gets questioned about his stomach or his balls for going into dark places. He fights Larina. He fights Trevor Bryan. They weren't particularly impressive fights, but he comes through them. He potentially gets a question asked about him in the Usyk fights, where people suggested that he might have quit and he missed opportunities by not jumping on Usyk when he had a chance to do so. But do you think now this is Daniel Dubois' real time? He could dominate heavyweight boxing for a few years until the next generation comes up beneath him, which might be Moses Zatuma.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's young. He's like 26, 27 years old. So he's got like another 10 years, to sort of reign. And like you said, Spence, he's grown in confidence. He's become a man. When he first started professional, he was a young kid. He was with his dad a lot. His dad kind of covered for everything that he couldn't say. He's gone through adversities. He's had the public shut him down and pick him up and shut him back down. And now he's grown out of his own shell to just be like, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do. I want to do this. Absolutely. This is how I am. And like you said, when he walked out in Wembley and he was like, this is my time. He felt it. He the last 2 fights performances put that confidence into him. So, and I feel like he's that dangerous that he could reign for the next 5 years.
I don't think it's the public that actually that bother him about what they think about him, whether he quit against Alexander Usyk, whether he quit against Joe Joyce the first time. I think with Daniel, it was the Alexander Usyk fight that actually moulded him as a fighter, because that was the one where he actually believed in himself and thought, I was doing all right there, and he grew from that. And Don Charles, who's been like a father figure with him as well, and like Don Charles, not just working on the physicalities, but more on the mindset of Daniel Dubois and developing him.
But the switch was against Jarrell Miller, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
When he came through the first few rounds against Jarrell Miller.
But that was the changing point. Was the Usyk loss actually? The loss. You talk about with a lot of fighters. Like I spoke to Duke McKenzie once, a freeweight world champion, who said that actually the fight that moulded him as a fighter was a European title fight he lost in France. And he goes, that's when he sort of believed in himself. Sometimes a loss and the manner that you lose can develop you.
Sure, but I think the real belief would have come in after the second half of the fight against Gerald Miller, but the fact that he dealt with Hrgovic, because Hrgovic was giving it big licks about, I'm going to school you, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that to you. And whilst he did land a lot on Dubois, Dubois took it, bit down his gum shield and dealt with him. And I think that would have been the ultimate confidence builder, wasn't it? Go on, Denzel.
I think, like you said, in the Miller fight, I think he grew confidence in that fight because he wasn't just fighting against Miller, he was fighting against not quitting, not giving up.
Correct.
And he beat that opponent and then went through Miller as well. And then he grew and said, I can do this. That's what I think.
Absolutely right.